lay another brick by brick. If you're going to build this thing into a massive thing that you expect it to be, anytime I meditate, it's giving myself love. And so from that place, I can then give someone else love. Gary Vaynerchuck can't be where it stops and ends. He's got to be the beginning of the next level to the podcast. My favorite book of all time maybe is A New Earth.
Yeah, mine too.
Transformation to me is understanding that.
Danny, so thank you so much for coming on my podcast. And well, I thought we might start with an introduction to you. And I like to do different introductions as the usual ones in my podcast because I just find it more interesting. And so going through your website, I saw a part in it which talked about your missions in life. I want to read them just for people listening to be able to be aware of them. And they are: 1, to pursue your highest self and inspire; 2, to make the world happier, healthier, and wiser; and 3, to raise consciousness. Could you get a little deeper into the why of your missions and into how they came into fruition so we can get to know you better?
Absolutely. So the missions have come about because I've been at such a dark place in my life. And it's from getting over that myself that it made me want to help other people achieve the same sort of thing. And I'll have you know that the missions came about only after I had taken steps toward in the right direction. For example, in February of 2020, I was in a real dark place. It was tough for me to get out of bed some days. And then I started taking steps in the right direction and started to work out and started to read and started to be consistent. And then it was sometime in May where I got these downloads from the universe where it's just like, okay, that's the path that I need to go down. I need to make the world happier, healthier, and wiser. And that just like rang true to who I am. And so those missions have come about because of how dark of a past I have, but from getting out of it, I've wanted to also inspire others to get out of it as well.
If you don't mind, could you talk a little bit more about your past so we can be like more aware and know about your transformation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess in February of 2020, I was really down because I didn't have a direction really for where I wanted to go in life. And I couldn't see myself in the near to long-term future. I had this thought that maybe I'd be a personal trainer and that I'd help people pursue a better body. And then what happened was quarantine happened where COVID struck down. And I said to myself, oh my God, nobody's going to hire a personal trainer. We're going to go into a depression. Nobody's going to be able to afford one and nobody's going to want that. So what should I do? What should I do instead? And I started to go inward and look inward and realize that I was a writer as a kid. And that was something that I always loved doing for the sake of doing it. So I started to write every day, and eventually it led to me doing different programs like phase 1 of the Live Hard program, which is just a way for you to pursue your highest version in the sense of you have to do 2 workouts a day, you have to follow a diet and a bunch of other things. And so that's a little bit about my past, at least in terms of the near past.
Yeah. And when you say that you started writing again, do you mean that you started writing on Twitter or what do you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Writing on Twitter and also just writing for myself. Both.
Like journaling?
Yeah. Journaling, putting my thoughts out onto the page and just documenting my mentality from what I was doing, and also writing articles on my website. And so all of that is what I mean by writing.
Yeah, great. And then after this stage of starting to write in quarantine, when did the idea of your podcast, of the Danny Miranda podcast, came into life?
Yeah, so the podcast came to be so organically. And, it was really interesting because 3 of my friends within a 6-month time frame all said that I should start a podcast, but they said it separately with no talking to each other about it. It was just like in conversation. They're like, you should have a podcast. And the first time I heard that, I was like, yeah, everyone's got a podcast. Why do I need a podcast? Second time, I was like, I've heard that before. Third time, I was like, I think this is a sign from the universe or something, because it was just a reaffirming in that sense. And then the other reason I started my podcast in August or September of 2020 was because in July, I started to have phone calls with people from Twitter. And every phone call I had, it was such a joyous experience, a conversation, a way for me to get to know the person, a way for me to give energy, a way for the person to teach me something. So it was a beautiful experience, and I wanted to press record on that. And that's what the podcast came to be.
And how do you think your podcast has been helping you like to achieve or relieve your missions? Because from some episodes that I have heard, I can see that like you don't talk about one certain topic, and you talk about many. I think also that in one specific, I don't remember the episode, but in one episode, I heard that you didn't want to name your podcast like with a niche name, because you didn't want it to have a certain topic. You wanted to talk about anything. So how has it helped you to build these missions you are trying to live?
Yeah. So the reason why I named my podcast the Danny Miranda Podcast is because I don't know what my interest will be in 5 years. And
Yeah.
and I think that knowing myself, my interests are all over the place. And one day I'll be interested in spirituality, and the next day I'll be interested in sports, and the next day I'll be interested in comedy, the next day I'll be interested in writing, and I'm all over and I go crazy. But one thing that I'm continually interested in is I'm interested in something. So the podcast is a way for me to explore that. I don't want to box myself in to this is what I am or this is what I'm not. I'm all of it. And from listening to the podcast for years, hopefully people will get to know me at a deeper level and get to know my interests and passions in a real way.
And how do you see your podcast 1 year from now?
1 year from now, we'll be at episode 256. So that's quite a ways away if we're going and following the format of 3 episodes a week. But, I just want to continue to impact more lives in a positive way. I want to continue to push myself as an interviewer and be able to get better as a listener and be able to get better as a communicator. And so hopefully the podcast will help me do all of those things a year from now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at least like with myself, I just post 1 episode per week, mostly because I struggle to record many episodes for 2 main reasons. One, because of time, because I'm still in school. And the second reason is because I don't know many people, or I just don't follow many people. And then after maybe recording 5 episodes, I don't know who to invite. And what would be like your advice for me here to contact with more people, and also to expand my circle?
Yeah, I just want to say massive respect to you. You're 15 years old, right?
Yeah.
That's incredible. And I started blogs when I was 13 and 15 years old, and people didn't believe that I was 13 and 15. And it's like, I respect what you're doing so much. And it's really cool that you're putting yourself out there at that age. And so I understand where you're coming from in the sense of you have responsibilities with school. And to answer your question though, about connecting with people, I would recommend you've read a lot of books, it seems like from your Instagram account. I would reach out to the top 20 authors you have and get their email, contact them some way, just be scrappy and be able to just put yourself out there and ask them, because you'd be surprised. I bet 1 out of your top 20 authors will be like, wow, this kid's 15 and he's able to do this and he's got this going and that. So I recommend just reaching out to people who are quote unquote above your level, because you never know what they'll say. And that's the advice that I give myself constantly and give to other people as well.
Okay, I will do it, and I will let you know how it works, because I I have been in contact with many authors I admire, thanks to my page, thanks to the Reader Lounge. For example, Robin Sharma, I have been DMing with him for a couple of times, and I asked him if he wanted to be on my podcast, and his assistant replied to me that he would love to, but once he has finished his book. So I really hope I can have him because he's the author of my favorite book of the 5 a.m. Club. And well, now that I mentioned the 5 a.m. club, I also think I have heard many things about your habits, and especially about the habit of meditating for 60 minutes a day. Are you still doing that?
Yes, sir.
And how has it like not affected you, but influenced you in a positive way? How has it transformed your life?
It's night and day. It doesn't even, there's no words I could say, but I will try to do my best to put it into words. It is, the sense of connectedness I feel with others, the sense of peace I feel in my being, the sense of self-awareness I feel I've gained. All of that is a direct result of meditation. And particularly the longer sessions, what has been so important about them has been that I've been able to go deeper on the issues that have happened in my past and the ego that I've built up, and been able to become aware of it and apologize to myself for situations where I've wronged others, and to apologize to others when they've wronged me, or been able to connect with myself in a deeper way. So yeah, it's been revolutionary in the way that I see the world and my connectedness to the world. And I'm super grateful to just sit with myself, because that just is the way of being that is so natural. People say to me all the time, like, how do you meditate for 60 minutes? How do you sit down with yourself for 60 minutes? And I tell them, yes, it's hard, and yes, it's difficult, and you get to that point, but also, like, that's just what we are. We are, if you strip down all the technology, all the everything outside of, like, sitting with ourselves is something that should be innate to all of us. So yeah, that's a little bit about the 60-minute meditations.
And when you meditate, what do you do? Do you just focus on your thoughts or on the sounds you in the environment, or what do you do?
Yeah, so I just let thoughts go through me. I don't try to focus the thoughts back to the breath or nothingness. Often I just let the thoughts go through. And what often ends up happening is that I'll be so aware of the voice inside my head that I'll just want it to be still. I want it to be nothing. And you get to that point because eventually you hear yourself saying the same things over and over. And you're like, this story again. What is this? What is that? And you're like, just shut up already. And from going to that place enough times, it's like you get bored of hearing yourself speak if you become aware of that. And so, yeah, that's the process. Just let thoughts go through me.
Yeah, as part of my morning routine, I meditate. But because of different books which I have read, my meditation sessions are more focused on like feeling my body and on being aware of the sounds, not necessarily on focusing on my thoughts, because I spend much time thinking, and I don't feel it is like very productive, or at least I don't perceive the good that just thinking makes to me. But I might try, well, what you do, I might try just to let thoughts go through, because also I sometimes get frustrated after meditating. And well, what is meditating for me and just having many thoughts, I get frustrated, and I think that happens to many people, right?
Yeah. And on that point, when I switch from going from focusing on the breath and then noting it whenever my thought would go away from the breath, and I switch then to just letting thoughts go through me, it was a sense of peace and a sense of relaxation, because in the first instance, I felt like I was swatting a fly and trying to swat a fly, like, oh, damn it, I just had another thought. And then you become aware of that and you get frustrated at yourself. But if you just let thoughts go through, you're like, oh, like, this is nice. This is relaxing. This is like
Yeah.
a sense of of peace is what I got from it. So I would recommend it for anyone who's struggled with the noting approach.
When you meditate, what do you do it for? Do you do it for the peace that it brings you, or for a spiritual reason?
I do it for the process
Mhm,
of meditating. It is something that I enjoy doing for the sake of doing it.
mhm.
And I find that it has so many benefits outside of the meditation chair, but it is so rewarding just to be able to go through my thoughts. And it's something that I can't live without at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I cannot live without my meditation sessions or my workout sessions in the morning either. And I was talking with two friends of mine who I do masterminds with, and we were talking about like acknowledging our feelings and just our thoughts, because it is one thing like to ignore your thoughts and your feelings, but not because of that they go. And another thing is like acknowledging them and trying to work them. So, do you think the meditation sessions are helping you with this?
Helping me with acknowledge my thoughts.
Yeah. To to to
Absolutely.
to have like a better mental health.
Yeah. I People notice. It's easy for me to notice on days when I don't meditate
Mhm.
because I'm more likely to get reactive to others. I'm more likely to be upset by the smallest thing. And on days when I do meditate, I'm much more kind, much more forgiving, much to not only other people, but also to myself. So it's something that transcends just the meditation chair. And
Mm,
it's also something that exists in the everyday world, the practicality of it.
mhm. What are some of your other habits besides of meditation that you think have helped you not just to build your podcast, but also like to build who you are today?
Yeah, I would say reading's a huge one. Exploring different texts and different people's minds. Just when I'm in the flow of reading, I am more creative. I'm writing more. I'm more willing to see the world in different ways. And I think it's so powerful because it changes the way your brain works, at least personally. Reading's a big one. Working out is a huge one. Just
Mhm.
moving your body in some capacity, whether that be a walk or a run or lifting weights, whatever it is for you, find your thing, find the way you enjoy moving your body. And it may change over the course of years, but those are two huge ones, reading and working out.
Reading, working out, and meditating. You're right. And I just remembered, and I have it right here in my notes. In episode 22 of your podcast, actually minute 46 for people listening, you said that when you give love to yourself, you can externalize that love so others experience it too. Well, I have two questions here. Do you think meditating and these good habits are helping you with this?
Definitely. Anytime I meditate, it's giving myself love. And so from that place, I can then give someone else love because I can only give you what I have in my heart. If I'm feeling a 5 out of 10 in love to myself, I can only give you 5 out of 10 in love. But if I'm loving 10 out of 10, I'm overflowing. I need to give that to other people.
Hmm.
I need to give that to someone else. And that's the basis for how my podcast started and how talking on the phone with people is like, I just wanted to give them love in some capacity. And from that conversation, it sparked into, oh, maybe this should be recorded. Oh, okay, that's cool. So what's the next step? And so, yeah, giving myself love and meditating and working out and reading, they're all the same thing from my perspective.
So it is very important for you to give yourself love so you can love others, right? Where do you think this identity, if it could be called like that, come from?
It probably comes from Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal
Oh,
Ravikant. It's a great book and one I highly recommend because it gives you not only the story of what happened to Kamal and how he dealt with the situation and got better from it, you get the practical elements of how to love yourself, what it means. And so I highly recommend that book. That book is one of the first that I read. on the path to creating a new version of myself. And it is an important book for anyone who's feeling in a dark place, or anyone who's feeling just like they're not understanding what they're doing here on this earth. That book will help transform you if you actually apply the practical aspects of it.
And so it seems like doing things out of love is very important to you. And it, as you said, it has been impactful for your podcast. What has been sort of your habit? What have been your habits and sort of your routine also with your podcast? Like to express this love and also to be consistent with episodes and to provide value.
Yeah. So I started recording the podcast in August of
Mhm.
2020, and I said to myself, oh, I'll just probably do one a week. But what I realized is that I love the process of recording so much that by the time I expected to release the podcast, September 23rd, 2020, a month later, I had so many episodes in the backlog. I had 20 episodes. And so I was like, wow, like I guess I really enjoyed doing that. And if I release these one a week, people are only going to hear this 20th episode 20 weeks from now. That's not
Mhm.
right, like to that person. So because of that, I just said, okay, I'm going to do 3 a week. Tim Ferriss does 3 a week. He's amazing. Joe Rogan does 3 or 4 a week. He's amazing.
Mhm.
They're the greats, or who I look at as the greats of the podcast game. So what do you need to do to be like one of them in 7 to 10 years? Just do 3 a week, just do 4 weeks. So that's kind of how I looked at it. Like, I want to be great at this. I want to be just at that level. And so you have to follow the habits of those people. And
Mhm.
so it came about because I naturally wanted to do it, but I also understood that they're great for a reason. And the reason they're great is because they've done it so many times. And if you want to get great at something, just do it more times. So that's a little bit about the consistency aspect of it. And the love aspect of it, of the podcast, is just, I feel such a connection with people when I'm having these conversations, when it's a really good conversation or interview and I'm connecting with them on a deep level. That's the love aspect of it. Taking that research part of it seriously and saying, in your 22nd episode at minute 46, you said this, and I have a question about that. That is powerful to someone because it means you really care. And the audience listening also is saying, wow, this person really cares. So in that moment, you're showing love not only to me, but also to the audience and to yourself. And so overall, I try to do that as well. And it leads for an experience that leads with love.
Yeah. You know, well, as I said, I just post one episode per week, and someone I look up to for my podcast specifically is Louis House, and I think he posts like 3 episodes per week. I might try to do that in the future, but I am not sure it will be like very like sustainable for me. Um, yeah, but also for the conversations, you are doing many of them. How do you prepare for each one of them? How much time do you spend preparing each conversation? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so fun. I get this question so much and I don't know how to answer it because it's like asking you, um, what's a good equivalent? Like something you love doing. Let's say it's reading, right? You love reading. And I ask you, like, how long does it take you to read that book or read 20 books last year? Like, you have no idea. I have no idea how much time I spent reading. I love doing it. Last night I was in bed and I did something which I rarely ever do, which is I was watching YouTube in bed and I was watching an upcoming guest for an hour or two, just talk about whatever, like trying to get into their head. And I've got crazy questions prepared for them based on this 2016 or 2018 statement they made. And so the answer to your question is I don't know how long I actually take to prepare because I love researching these guests. I'm inviting them onto the podcast because I want to learn more about them. I'm genuinely so curious about it. And that leads myself to just get enamored with it. I don't know how much time, but it's a lot of time and it's enjoyable for me. So it doesn't feel like a lot of time.
No, yeah, and I think it's a great analogy with what you said about reading, because I mean, I can maybe tell you how much time I read per day, but I cannot tell you how much time it took me to read the book I just finished last week or something like that, because I just love it. And what is like your favorite and your least favorite part of podcasting? Or well, by yep. No,
Yeah, it's a
go
really
ahead.
good
Huh?
question. No, it's a really good question. My least favorite part is probably the editing of it, like the intro, outro, but I do it and I do it with passion because I know that it leads to the end result I actually want, which is getting this conversation out to people. And my most favorite part is probably the research, but also how the research interacts with asking a really good question and having the guest's face light up and understanding and making sure that the audience is on the same page and really making that connection with the guest because of the research I did. So least favorite would be the editing. The most favorite would be the connection with the guest thanks to the research.
Yeah, there's this guy in Mexico. He's sort of my mentor. Let's call him. His name is Spencer Hoffman. And one of the things he usually says is small things consistently done. Well, consistently and extraordinarily done are what lead to great results. And I think that's basically what happens with podcasting. And do you know who Nick from Book Thinkers is?
No, I don't.
No, well, so he's a friend of mine. He has got a really big account, that's mine, but he has got like 100,000 plus followers. And we were talking about podcasting. He has his podcast too, and he interviews great authors there. And we were talking about what it takes to grow a podcast, and specifically about Lewis House, and that people as him or as Joe Rogan or as Tim Ferriss have been in the game for many years, and probably that has been one of the factors that has helped them like build what they have built today. And in your case, you have been in the game of podcasting, and me too, just for a few months. But I think in your website it says that you are well that your podcast is one of the top 1% in the world. And
1.5%.
oh,
Yes, sir.
and how does that feel to you to know what you have been building and what and the impact it has been making on people?
Yeah, it feels really cool. It feels even cooler when I get messages from people though that say like this is what happened. This I listened to this podcast. I loved it. I did this. Thank you so much for that. I think the numbers are awesome, but what I get off on is the personal messages. On
Mhm.
my wall, I've got probably like 50 or 60 different actual messages from people saying how the podcast has impacted them in some capacity. And that means so much to me, man. Like that's more important than top 1.5% or top 1%, whatever. Like the fact that people are interacting with it and appreciating it and it's making a difference in their life, that's the oxygen that really keeps me going.
Yeah, for sure, and that's an outcome of also doing things from out of love, and I really love that.
Absolutely.
Well, last year when I recorded episodes, I used to ask sort of the same questions to each guest, and many people actually told me that like it was very monotonous, the podcast, and also mostly my questions. But now I think that I have sort of improved my podcast and mostly the research part, so that I am more prepared. And that is actually, I think, the part not which I dislike the most. But I really love editing because I can like reflect on what we are talking about. I can reflect on a lesson I heard. So, for example, today after this interview, I will be editing my conversation with Don Miguel Ruiz Jr., and we really had a great conversation, and I really enjoyed that. But I think the part which I like the most is really like getting into the concepts and like seeing the transformation that it yeah makes for me and for others also. And here I just want to ask you for more advice on podcasting. What do you think I could improve based on some of the things that I have told you?
I think you're an incredible podcast host, my man.
Thank you.
Seriously, I don't think you asked the basic questions. I'm impressed with the research you've done, and you make it flow really nicely. And the fact that you're doing this at 15 years old is absolutely incredible. So
Thank you.
keep on keeping on, and I'm a fan. And yeah, no, keep doing what you're doing.
All right. Yeah, because well, I want to tell you a little bit more about my vision. So maybe you can give me advice on that too, because it is more about like the entrepreneurial part of the podcast. And you have interviewed many more people than I have. And again, that's why I'm asking for advice. So in the long run, 10 years from now, I don't want the transformation journey just to be the podcast. I want it to be like, yeah, I want to have the podcast, but I also want to have, I don't know, like a membership, and also have a group of mentors who focus on teaching a certain group of people, because that's what I have seen has made a big impact on my life: mentors and books. And that's sort of what I want to build beyond the podcast. That's the why of also my page. Although in the short term, I find many problems. I struggle a lot with consistency, with creativity. And what would be your advice for that? Not just for the transformation journey, but also for the reader lounge. So like for my projects.
What about consistency do you struggle with?
For example, in the last weeks, I have not been posting a lot on the reader lounge. I have been making maybe 4 to 5 posts per week. And 1 month ago, I used to post daily. So 7 posts, and also, let's say, 3 reels per week and one IGTV, or something like that. So I would say that's mostly my problem with consistency.
Why do you think that's happening?
Because when I was doing that, I wasn't focusing much on the podcast. My Instagram page for the podcast was mainly like one carousel per interview, and a quote post. And now I am posting daily stuff and IGTV videos and reels. And I know maybe it's an organization issue.
Mm. Yeah, man. I think I don't really know what advice I have for you on that aspect of it, because you're still putting in work, you still have this mission, you're still going on the mission. It's more so on someone who loses that sense of purpose or mission. That's what usually happens, right? When someone goes from posting daily to posting 4 or 5 times a week or less, it's like they lost some sense of mission, they lost some sense of purpose. And for that person, I'd tell them to just have a daily statement or a daily mission statement that they review on a daily basis. And I think that's helpful for consistency, and talks about the type of person you want to be. One thing I like to do is I have note cards written in my bathroom that talk about the type of person I want to be, the types of things that I want to do. And I'm seeing that constantly. It's going to my subconscious. So that's something to try out and consider, but it doesn't sound like that's your issue. It just sounds like you have so many different things, so many different avenues that you want to express yourself. So I would say just keep on leaning into those which feel most natural to you, and explore your curiosity and keep on testing out different things. That's kind of my short advice to you.
Yeah, right. Thank you. How do you personally set goals? You just mentioned identity and who you want to be and who you are. And in Atomic Habits, one of the things that James Clear says is not to set goals like to be to have $1 million, but to be a millionaire. So how do you set goals?
Yeah, I think consistency is such an important part of it, in the sense of, I want to be a podcaster, but I also want to put out 3 episodes a week. So that naturally makes me a podcaster. And that by doing the process, I will get to my goals. I think of what can I control about this? I can't control whether I'm a top 1.5% podcast or top 1% or whatever. I can't control that. That's like up to other people to decide. But what can I control? I can control my work ethic. I can control how much output I put out. I can control how many episodes I record. I can control how many videos I post. Okay, if I know that, then that allows me to think about goals and think about where I want to go. So the goals that I set are internal goals. I can control them, and I try to let the external fall where it may. I do have this goal of like selling out Madison Square Garden, which is nothing that I can control on a day-to-day basis, but it's just like more of a vision of like, I want to get to that point. So yeah, that's a little bit about how I set goals, is like, think about it internally first.
Okay, so it's about setting a vision and setting the goals that setting goals about habits, about actions that will
Yep.
lead you to that. Right.
Yep.
You also, now getting back to another part of the podcast, you mentioned the mission statement, and I guess your mission statement is what we started this podcast with, right?
Mm-hmm.
How I just want you to get like a little deeper into the part of raising consciousness, because I think that is maybe the one that resonated the most with me. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
just get deeper into that one.
Yeah. So, this really hit home for me and made me realize when I would speak on the phone with people, they say, man, you're so high energy, man. And it's the level of energy, I think, that surprises people off the bat. And the energy comes from a higher level of consciousness. I know, because just a year or 2 years ago, when I was kind of struggling through life in the sense of not knowing what I was here to do, did I have a lower level of consciousness, and I wasn't as energetic, and I wasn't as interested in the day-to-day being. So the part about consciousness comes from quickly raising my own level and understanding that if I could do this, then anyone can do it. And it's really important to me. It's like how I think about every action, in a sense, is like, is this raising the consciousness of people? Can this help raise the consciousness of people? And it's not something that I'm deliberately saying, but it's going on subconsciously in my own head. So yeah, man, I think it's so important. And like, it's just centered around giving and helping. And if we can just bring each other up, there's enough for everyone to win. There's enough for everyone. So just giving and helping and leading with that energy. And that's about raising the consciousness of humanity.
For sure. I made a post today on the Transformation Journeys Instagram, and it was about like what an individual can do to create social transformation or collective transformation. And it all starts within. That post came after a lesson I learned in a conversation with a friend of mine for the podcast. And yeah, I really think it's like a big part of my life right now, the idea of going within to make a change around me. And when you mention consciousness, do you mean like the awareness, the acknowledging your reality, or something beyond that, something more spiritual?
By consciousness, I mean, and what I think of when I say raise the consciousness of humanity, I think of, I'm going to pull it up real quick because it's, what's his name? David Hawkins, consciousness. And if, for those who are listening, you could search David Hawkins consciousness and you'll come up with a list of maybe 10 or 15 different attributes or levels of consciousness that are aligned with different numbers. And so here I'm going to read some of them so people get a sense. Whereas like the first level, the bottom level would be apathy, guilt, and shame. A level above that would be grief, fear, and desire. A level above would be anger, pride, courage. A level above would be neutrality, willingness, acceptance. A level above would be reason, love, joy. A level above would be peace and enlightenment. And while I by no means think I am enlightened or peaceful, or like would describe myself at that level, I do think that I've gone from fear to love in a matter of a year, and there are many reasons for that, but I genuinely believe that in my heart. And so when I realized that, I was like, man, like if I could get people who are also in fear or also feeling guilt or also feeling anger and get them to maybe even willingness or acceptance or reason, like that is a life worth living to
Yeah.
me. And so when I say about raising the consciousness of humanity, I'm thinking of David Hawkins' scale. And by also that doesn't mean that I'm always operating in love, you know? It just means that I believe that I feel that often enough where I could help people also experience that. So, yeah.
What you were reading was triangle upside down with many colors, or what was it? Because I just googled it and that's what appeared. But yeah,
Yeah.
all right, I do agree with basically with you about the idea of raising consciousness. I think, well, so the purpose of the podcast is to create transformation through connections with mentors and an audience from all around the world. And that's basically what I am trying to do right now, to connect with you, to also connect with my audience, and to in the future build something even more powerful. And part of that is this idea of raising consciousness. Have you read any book by Eckhart Tolle?
Yeah. My favorite book of all time maybe is A New Earth.
Yeah,
Um,
mine too.
so that book is so crazy
It
because
is. It is.
I I was getting picked up from the airport, and this driver, I started having this conversation with this driver, and he recommends A New Earth to me. And I'm like, okay, thank you so much. I'm going to read it. I ended up reading it. And he also gave me his email address. After reading it, I sent him an email and thanking him. He never responded. I ended up reading it again for a second time in the past month or two. And this time I found his phone number on Google, sent him a text, and he responded. And I invited him onto my podcast, and that episode is publishing sometime in the next couple of weeks. And it was incredible. And it was just the full circle nature of A New Earth. But yeah, man, incredible book. What were your biggest takeaways from it?
Hmm. So, through the past years, I think I have unconsciously been developing consciousness, and many times, even right now, I sort of have experienced uh, that I am in the moment, but I have like I am looking at the moment. I am not the one living it. I am like I don't know. It's crazy. And when I read in A New Earth about space and the space that consciousness creates, the metaphor of the astronaut watching Earth and him having space to appreciate it, to appreciate how beautiful it is and how insignificant it is, that was really, really powerful. And it really resonated with me a lot. It was like a blowing moment. And another thing I think is the idea of yeah, transforming from the place of ego to a place of consciousness. It really, really was great book. The friend I was telling you about, who I had my conversation with, his name is Emilio Ortiz, and he actually was the one who suggested the book to me. And the conversation was mostly about the book, and that is one thing that I like love to talk about. And also, just one thing I want to mention. So I have been raised in a Catholic family, and I mean, I haven't had any issues with, well, many issues with the church or anything, but still, I didn't like identify myself a couple of months ago, a few months ago, with the religion, because there were some things which didn't resonate with me. But after reading A New Earth, I was able to like really see what the message is, and now I can be listening to someone speak about Jesus or about another religion or anything, and I am just able to appreciate it. I can like sort of translate what they are saying to the idea, to the principles from A New Earth, and that has also been really powerful. I just preparing a clip for my YouTube channel of the transformation journey with this interview. I was looking for some images to add to the video, and there was this image which had Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, Kirsha, I think it's the name, and many other people. And in a book, Jesus was holding a book, and the book said, "Ego sum via, verita et vita," and it basically means I am the way. Well, I am the way. I am life, and I am the truth. And if I had seen that image 1 year ago, I maybe would have just ignored it. But after reading A New Earth, it was like really powerful and really mind blowing. It's really a great book.
What do the people around you say about you talking about consciousness and the connection between religions? What's been the response when you start talking about some of the concepts from the book?
Well, it depends who I'm talking about this with. So for example, my mom, even though she really is a religious person, she goes to church and everything. She still like likes to read and to learn about other religions and about other philosophies. And so it is easy to talk with her about these things because she sort of understands what I understand. And with her, it is easy. With the two friends who I do the masterminds with, it's they are open-minded, but still we haven't got the same understanding about this thing about about consciousness. So with them, it's a little trickier to get them to like sort of learn these things. And with all of my other friends and all the other people, I don't usually talk about this because I am not sure how they are gonna get it. And many people maybe will get offended because I say something about their religion, and I don't want to offend them or anything. Has something similar happened to you?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting because I'm 25, about to turn 26, and it's like there are a lot of people my age who couldn't have a conversation about something like this. So I can only imagine at 15 what that must be like. And so, I think that a lot of the things in the book go counter to some of the ideas that at least I've been raised with. And my grandma, for example, found the book depressing. And so that was interesting because what her reasoning for that was like something it talks about is the care element of how caring for someone who's sick could actually make someone sick in it of itself. And that was a concept that she had a lot of struggle with because she's such a caring person. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting because everyone will have a different reaction to it, but it's a book that if you're living with ego is very hard for you to grasp onto. And it's if I read this book 3 or 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I would not have been able to read it at all. It wouldn't have been possible. None of it would have made any sense to me. I actually tried to read the Power of Now in college, and I couldn't. It was so boring to me. It didn't make any sense. And it's just like when you're ready for it, almost the
Mhm.
book will find you.
Yeah, that's completely true. So in many of the past podcasts conversations I have been having, a common topic between them has been the idea of the lesson getting to to the pupil when he or she is ready. So, for example, I have this friend, Mike from Underdog Books. He has an account similar to mine through the Reader Lounge, And he was basically living in the streets when he was a teen, and he was with his brother and another man. And the man, well, they were stealing food. um and he Mike told the man that he couldn't do it, and the man told him never to say that he cannot do something. Mike, in the moment, just heard a man screaming, but he said that many years later, that lesson like came again into his mind, and it was really powerful. It's again the idea of the lesson getting to the person who learns it when he is ready. And that, I think, that has been happening to me uh many times too, because I sort of started my journey of self-development when I was 13. But by the time I was reading like a book, the first book I read was Elon Musk, and I took 5 months to read it. And if I had read A New Earth or any book, any similar book, I wouldn't have got the concepts nor the lessons, and I wouldn't have got like interested in reading, and maybe we wouldn't be here today. But I know the universe works in weird ways.
Definitely. And it's incredible that you've stuck with it for so long. For me, when I started my journey at 13 of writing a time management blog, I did it for 3 months and then I quit. I stopped because I wanted to be a normal kid. And I got upset when people who were older than me said, like, what is this kid 13? And he's not actually 13. And this is a joke from the parent is doing this. And so major props to you, man, for sticking with the journey from 13, 14, 15. Hats off to you, and keep going.
Thank you very much. And I think that you came in contact with Gary V when you were writing, when you were 13, right? Could you tell us about that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was 13, I saw Wine Library TV, and this is like a program that Gary V put on. It was originally on YouTube. Eventually, it went to Vimeo, but back to YouTube. He would just do a daily wine show of like, this is a wine that I enjoy, and I would watch it. And why did I watch it? I don't know, but I suspect it was because he was operating with love and kindness, and some part of me was attracted to that. And I wrote a blog post about Gary V, and Gary V comments on it when I was 13 on this blog post. And so I was very familiar with him. Then when I was 15, I had a different blog at the time. It was a New York Knicks blog. And I wanted to go to his book signing for The Thank You Economy, which was his second book. But the book signing was on a school night, and I was 15, your age. So my mom wouldn't let me go to the book signing. And I told Gary that much, that, hey, my mom won't let me come. I wish I could make it. And he said, no problem. Let me give your mom a call. What's her number? And so he calls her on the spot. She says, fine, Danny, you can go to the book signing. We ended up going. She drove me there, and I ended up taking a picture with Gary V that, laid the scene for me to eventually 10 years later actually interview him for the podcast, episode 39. And it just goes to show, man, like, one, he's operating with kindness and love and empathy and all that stuff. And two, it's like, these things take a long time to develop, and you don't know how they're actually going to end up developing. Who knows, in 10 years, this conversation we're having now could lead to something massive that we could never even predict, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that it's just incredible, and it continues to amaze me the way the universe really works.
Yeah, me too. And how did it feel to connect again with Gary V for your podcast? Because it had a different context, and when you were 15 was for him to sign a book for you. But then I think it was a few months ago, right, when you had him on your podcast. What did it feel like to connect with him, but in a different way?
Yeah, man, I would say that to actually speak to him and have a conversation and really go deeper on his story was really cool, because it was a way to express my gratitude and ask thoughtful questions to someone I've admired for a long time. And I've watched Gary V a million times on this very screen that I'm looking at you at. And it's like, for have him to be talking back at me, it was just weird in that sense, and cool, very weird and cool. And so, yeah, I'm grateful for the opportunity, and it was definitely different. And I hope next time we do it, it's in Madison Square Garden and I'm interviewing him in front of 20,000 people. Maybe not next time, but maybe sometime in the next 10 years that will happen.
That would be great, actually. And you know, has he been the biggest, well, the biggest name on your podcast, or who has been the biggest
Yeah, I would say he's probably the biggest name.
name? And do you think that was like a big milestone, not just like for you in your life, and not just for your podcast, but also like for the audience? Was it a milestone?
Yeah, I would say it's a milestone, but I would also say that a past version of me would have believed that because Gary Vaynerchuck got on the podcast, that was the win, and I'd won the podcast game, and that was it. And like, how could I ever top that, right? So now I thought, like, that's cool, but that's only 39 out of 100, and I still have 61 left to fulfill my promise to myself. And so I think I was able to mature to realize that he's just another person and he's the biggest name, and it was definitely a milestone and a cool thing. But at the same time, lay another brick by brick.
Mm.
If you're going to build this thing into a massive thing that you expect it to be, Gary Vaynerchuk can't be where it stops and ends. He's got to be the beginning of the next level to the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the main goal with your podcast originally was to get to 100 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And
Yes, sir.
now, what is the goal? Because you already have achieved that milestone.
Yeah, well, we just hit episode 100 today, which was awesome. And the next goal is to just continue to spread love through the voice and through the video and through the conversations, so that people can continue on their journey of whatever that the podcast is meaning to them, in the sense of living a better life or learning something new or being happier, healthier, and wiser in some capacity. So the podcast is just a way for me to fulfill those missions.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say it's less about I'm going to do it X times, because I just enjoy doing it so much. You're going to get an episode Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from now until who knows how long.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've knocked out that consistency piece, and now it's just about fulfilling the mission and continuing the mission on.
Mm-hmm. And because you love the process, you will keep doing it. Yeah, I love that. And now, changing a little bit of topics, and this question just came into my mind. What do you think is something that people should ask you?
Something that people should ask me. I haven't spent a lot of time doing research on myself, my man. But, about my blog when I was 13, like, how has your blog at 13 impacted you in present day? And you kind of did that with asking about Gary Vaynerchuk and that story. So yeah, man, that's something I would ask me. I think it's very hard to look at yourself in that third person and ask yourself questions like, maybe what really motivates you, like at your core, what do you think it is? I don't know. These are just off the top of my head, but what inspires you to be empathetic? What, like, I just go to these places, but yeah, no, that's some questions that I would ask myself.
It's a great answer, actually. Yeah, it was what we have just been talking about you being kind, building consciousness, and now talking about your journey. Because if I didn't get it, if I didn't get it wrong, so you were 13 and had a blog, right? And then at 15 again. And then what happened? When did you like stop or pause that project?
Yeah. So I felt like I wanted to be like a kid, like a normal kid, like how you're like podcasting up a storm and just like talking to people all over the world. Like I was pretty much doing that same thing at 13 and 15 via the written word. And a part of me was like, I'd like to just like be what a normal high school kid is like. And I'm grateful for those experiences because I put it away, all the internet stuff and the blogging and the writing. I still had some of the writing parts to me. I was part of the newspaper in high school. So that was a way to keep that going. But I just wanted to be a kid is like the framework of it. I didn't want the responsibilities that come with having a podcast and that come with putting myself out there, that come with having deadlines and stuff like that. I didn't have a mission that I was serving. So it was very easy for me to say, screw this. I just want to play around. And so that's what happened for a lot of years from let's call it 16 or 17 to 22. And then when I was 22, I started back up again on doing all this stuff with e-commerce. And it's a never-ending journey, the online game, but it's been a lot of fun.
It sometimes happens to me too, that I sort of think, shouldn't I be doing like stuff people my age are usually doing?
Yeah.
But then I look at, for example, the two friends I told you about, they are 15 too, 15 and 16. And they love investing, and daily and right now they sometimes do trading, but daily they are learning about investing. And looking at them, I sort of get inspired again or think about my journey. And I love what I do. And it doesn't mean that I do not like play video games sometimes with my friends or anything, but I do prefer to be reading and to wake up early to exercise and have these conversations for my podcast, because I don't know, I just think it is something I will keep building for the long term, and it is something that has been impacting me a lot and impacting my friends, family, and close social group a lot. um and well, have you I just have a couple more questions before wrapping up. And the first one, so we have already talked about A New Earth. But what are some other good book recommendations you have?
I would say one that I saw on your Instagram was Green Lights. Green
Yeah,
Lights by Matthew McConaughey is an incredible piece of
it
art
is.
and a book. And my mom actually got it for me a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And I was like, Mom, I appreciate this so much. Thank you. But I read this book when it came out and I loved it so much. So yeah, Green Lights is one that I would say blew me away because Matthew McConaughey is known as a actor, and a speaker, maybe, and a charismatic individual, but a writer, I wouldn't put him in that bucket. But this book obviously shows that he's a writer as well. The stories kept me hooked. And I read that book in like, I don't know, a day. Like it was probably my quickest read of 2020. I'm looking around my room to see what other books I've been reading recently and what other books I like. But no, one book that impacted me a lot was Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins.
Those three books with the 5 a.m. club are in my top 4 books.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. We have great taste, my man. But no, Awaken the Giant Within was such a good one because it made me realize that I actually could change, that I could be a different person. And it wasn't one thing that stuck out to me, but it was just like the idea that I could be a different person. And it convinced me of that 100%. So that was a really important book that I read when I was feeling down, and it took me to a new level.
Great. Those are really, really great books. And now, this is a question, a non-negotiable question in my podcast, and it is: what is your approach and definition of transformation? You have already talked a little about your change, about how you have been developing through the past months. But right now, what is your definition and how do you approach transformation?
Transformation to me is understanding that we are constantly transforming. And we are constantly changing no matter what. We're always changing. Right now, the cells in your body are creating new cells so that you could be a different person. And if you look at yourself a year ago, were you the same person exactly? No way. You were doing different things. You were acting slightly different. Change is a constant in life, and transformation is about accepting that process and leaning into it to be the highest version of yourself.
That's it. That yeah. I cannot add anything to that. That's it basically. And well, really, it's been a great conversation. I really thank you for coming in, and I thank Jimmy, I think ROSEDRIIVE for connecting us, because I was, so there is this guy who has been an audience member of my projects for a while. His name is Enrique Lorenzo, and he will be listening to this, I know. And he suggested that I could ask my past guests who could I have on the podcast next, and I did that, and then asked Jimmy, and Jimmy connected me to you, and I really thank both of them for their help, and I thank you for coming, and for your lessons basically, and for your energy too. That's been a great part. And is there anything you would like to add to that, or to anything?
I would just like to add that, I really admire and respect what you're doing.
Thank
I
you, man.
I think that it's an incredible project, and you have my support. And if you need my help with anything, I'm always a message away. And um, yeah, man, just keep on keeping on and keep it going, because it's really great to see.
Thank you. And well, just one last thing for the audience. Where can they find you?
They can find me at Hey Danny Miranda on Twitter is the best place to let me know what you thought about this episode. Let me know if anything I said was at all useful to you. And I also have a podcast, the Danny Miranda Podcast, where I'm the one asking the questions, interviewing top performers, athletes, business people, entrepreneurs, meditators, all over the spectrum of my interests. And I hope anyone checks that out if they're interested.
Yeah, I will leave the links to those two things in the description of the episode. And well, really, that was it, and it was a really great conversation. Again, thank you so much.